Welcome friends to Guru Shakti channel of learning. This video is about chapter 2nd of 12th Microeconomics Theory of Consumer Behavior. As the chapter name reflects, this chapter highlights how the consumer behaves in terms of purchasing the goods. Keep in mind that the goods word represents services also. We know that every day we need essentials such as food, clothing, etc. As well as we want stuff for one or the other reason. But what makes a consumer to choose an item to ultimately purchase? In economics, we say this situation as the problem of choice. And this problem in terms of consumers could be solved by posing a question, that is whether the stuff that I am thinking of purchasing will satisfy me at the maximum level or not. Will I get the maximum satisfaction or not? Next, anything that ultimately is bought also depends on the preferences of the consumer, such as consumer X may like more floral printed dress and consumer Y may like embroidered dress, etc. Then we have affordability, whether the consumer has enough rupees that is needed to purchase or is it possible to pay through EMIs. Next, prices of the goods, whether the price is high or low and whether the product is available on discount or not. And lastly, level of income earned by the individual also influences the purchasing patterns. Whether this mango satisfies me at the maximum level or not. The answer might be yes or no, and I can rate it as well depending upon my level of satisfaction. Utility is referred as want satisfying capacity that a particular product has upon an individual. It is totally subjective in nature and differs from person to person and place to place. Example, in winter season, an AC might not give you any utils of satisfaction, but in summer it does. Now, under utility, cardinal utility analysis will be spoken about. It expresses the utility in terms of numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. And under this, we have two measures of utility, total utility and marginal utility. Measures of utility. Here is a table that highlights the number of units consumed and the satisfaction level is expressed in terms of numbers. After having first unit of mangoes, the consumer is having 12 utils of satisfaction. After having a second unit of mangoes, the consumer is having 18 utils of satisfaction. After having third unit of mangoes, the consumer is having 22 utils of satisfaction. After having fourth unit of mangoes, the consumer is having 24 utils of satisfaction. After having fifth unit of mangoes, the consumer is having 24 utils of satisfaction. At this point, there is no increase in total utility and it is constant. After having the sixth unit of mangoes, the consumer has 22 utils of satisfaction. Total utility represents the total satisfaction the consumer feels after consuming a given amount of the commodity. It is represented as TUN, and N stands for the number of unit. It is the total utility derived from consuming N units of a commodity X. The same could be represented on a graph as follows. Here, the x-axis represents the units of commodity consumed and y-axis represents the total utility derived after consuming. Another measure of utility, that is marginal utility. Pay attention to the third column over here. You can see while consuming the first unit of mango, the total and the marginal utility are same. But with every additional unit of consumption, there is additional utils of satisfaction experienced by the consumer, and it is called the marginal utility. Notice that with second unit consumption, 6 utils of additional satisfaction is experienced. When the consumer consumed first unit of mangoes, the utils of satisfaction was 12, and 12 plus 6 is 18. 18 is the total satisfaction level, that is total utility after consuming second unit of mangoes, whereas 6 is the additional utils of satisfaction, that is the marginal utility. After consuming third unit of mangoes, the consumer is experiencing 22 utils of satisfaction. There is 4 utils of marginal utility. This makes the total utility to get increased by 4 more points. MU3 is 4. After consuming fourth unit of mangoes, the consumer is experiencing 24 utils of satisfaction. 22 plus 2 is 24. Hence, there is 2 additional utils of satisfaction. After consuming fifth unit of mangoes, the consumer is again experiencing the same 24 utils of satisfaction. Hence, there is 0 utils of satisfaction. This is the consumer experiencing no satisfaction by the additional unit and is at the threshold of giving up the intake of the additional units of mangoes. Still, if he or she continues, the marginal utility drops to the negative. After consuming sixth unit of mangoes, the consumer's total utility starts to decline to 22 utils. He or she feels enough of it and no more, I need it. Marginal utility represents change in total utility. The change is because of having the additional units. It could be mathematically represented as follows. MUN is equal to TUN minus TUN minus 1. MU at second unit's consumption is given by total utility at second unit, that is 18, minus total utility at first unit, that is 12. The subtraction gives us 6 as the answer. The marginal utility at the second unit's consumption is 6. This is This is the graphical representation of the marginal utility. X axis shows the units consumed and Y axis represents the marginal utility. Each additional unit of the commodity gives less and less additional utils of satisfaction. Notice here that marginal utility decreases from 12 to 6, from 6 to 4, from 4 to 2, and from 2 to 0, and further becomes negative. Marginal utility from consuming each additional unit of a commodity declines as its consumption increases while keeping consumption of other commodities constant. This is called the law of diminishing marginal utility. The graph over here represents the law of diminishing marginal utility. The starting point is same for both total utility and marginal utility. While mu decreases, the orange curve, the mu decreases, the total utility increases till the point in which the marginal utility is 0. The total utility is at the highest level at the 4th and 5th units consumption. After that, when the marginal utility falls to negative, the total utility starts declining. Keeping in mind the law of diminishing marginal utility, demand curve could be derived. But before that, what is demand and what is demand curve? Demand is the quantity of commodity in terms of 1 or 2, such as 1 kg or 2 kg, 1 liter or 2 liter, 1 session or 2 sessions, etc. Quantity of good the consumer is willing to buy and purchases because he or she is capable of affording is demand. The demand curve is a graphical representation that shows the quantities of a commodity purchased at a particular price. This schedule shows the price and the quantity in demand. Here, when the price is 10, the consumer is willing to purchase 55 kgs of commodity X, such as tomatoes. But when the price shoots up to 20, the consumer lowers the quantity to 30 kgs to be purchased. When further the prices rises, it's only 15 kgs the consumer is willing and could afford to purchase. Because of the rise in price, the consumer's marginal utility keeps on falling. The consumer is feeling less and less satisfied with the price rise. Lastly, when the price is 40, the consumer purchases only 5 kgs of tomatoes. If the price increases to 50, probably the consumer might still take few kgs, but with furthermore increase to 60 rupees, the satisfaction level will become negative and the consumer might not purchase at all. This schedule shows us how the price of the commodity influences the demand of the quantity by influencing the amount of utility experienced by the consumer. The same is graphically represented with quantity in demand on x-axis and price on y-axis. Notice that at lower prices, the consumer is willing to buy more. At higher prices, the consumer is willing to buy less. And there is a negative relationship between price of a commodity and quantity demanded. This is called the law of demand. Demand function is the relation between the consumer's optimal choice of the quantity of a good and its price. With every addition to price level, there is a subtraction in the level of quantity demanded. We can say that price is an independent variable and quantity demanded is dependent variable. This could be mathematically represented in equation form. Q is equal to function of P. One can derive a linear equation from the given data. Q stands for the quantity demanded and P stands for price. But one has to keep in mind that it is not only the price that plays a part in consumers' mind to demand a particular product. We'll continue in the next video. Thank you for watching.